Ooh, tech difficulties right off the back. Holy cow, the Cubs are back and they're now the Hunters. Welcome back to Holy Cow, the Chicago Cubs show on the Frustrated Chicago Sports Fan channel. A lot's changed since the last episode. Season had just ended to a team that I hate the most, the Milwaukee Beer Boys. The Bears were coming out of the bye week at 2-2 with the big game with the Washington football team coming up, and I had much longer hair than what you see right now. It's Friday the 13th, one day before Valentine's Day. The Cubs are in Mesa, Arizona. It's 80 degrees, and pitchers and catchers have reported to camp. Sun is shining in Arizona for the first time in a long time, the Chicago Cubs aren't just hoping to compete. They're expected to win the whole damn thing. So let's talk about that, about how we got from October 11th to February 13th with this new feeling of expectations. Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins didn't have the best trade deadline as it relates to their perception from the media and the fans, me included. But they made up for it in a huge way this offseason. The front office was super aggressive in January, mostly. The Cubs coming off a 92 win season where they had just missed a deep run, and the message heading into camp is clear. The goal is a trophy. So let's start this off. First segment, offseason transactions. There was a point in the offseason where Cubs fans were getting a little antsy. The team on 35th Street was way more active, and the Cubs were busy, but the Cubs were just busy in the background. We didn't know what they had going on. They mostly missed out on the hot stove, but come January, things got moving and they got moving fast. I'm gonna dive right into this money. The Cubs made a big splash, signing Alex Bregman to a 5-year, $175 million deal. Even though Kyle Tucker was technically still a free agent when this move was made, the vibe that he was never coming back to the Cubs was loud. We can do a whole thing about how we basically had him for one season and gave up a lot of young assets for that one season. But getting Bregman as a free agent almost 2 weeks prior to that takes the rain out of those storm clouds. There's no need to even talk about that because it's kind of like a situation you didn't lose anything. And I'm not saying losing Tucker wasn't tough. He's a great left-hand batter, and when healthy, he's one of the best in the league. But LA made him the highest paid player in the majors in terms of yearly salary. But the total deal was 4 years, 240 million. And with back-to-back seasons of injury concerns and, like I said, the kind of vibe being off between the two, I don't think the Cubs were going to go that high for him. But I think Bregman might actually be a better fit for what the team needs right now. He brings that championship pedigree, 2 rings while he was with the Houston Astros. And I'm not saying that Kyle Tucker doesn't bring that same type of pedigree as well, but because he was on those Houston teams too. But Alex Bregman, he's an elite decision maker. And at the plate and in the clubhouse, he has a low strikeout rate. Plus, he's already been called a baseball savant by all of his teammates his whole career. And Tucker and Bregman are similar in what they do on the field. But it's kind of that last thing that kind of separates the two. Other than the fact that Bregman is cheaper, obviously, because the Cubs kind of got him for almost $100 million less. But he's supposedly a better clubhouse guy and more of a vocal leader than what Kyle Tucker was. I'm listening to a podcast, an interview from Bruce Levine, you all know, Cubs beat writer for ESPN 1000. And he's telling a story about how Kyle Tucker was already making his teammates better. He's in the clubhouse talking to Hobie Milner, that he knows all of his pitches before he even before the ball even leaves the glove, telling him he's got a tail, and that's how he was able to just get up on his stuff the whole time he's been seeing him his whole career. So that type of insight is very valuable in the clubhouse, especially when you're the new guy. And that's the type of stuff you didn't hear about Kyle Tucker. Again, not to poo-poo on Kyle Tucker, but when you hear stuff like this from the guy that's replacing Kyle Tucker, so to speak, it makes you feel a lot better than for losing Cal Tucker. Now, when I heard that personally from that little quip from Bruce Levine, I kind of, side-eyed a little bit because what Houston Astros player from that era don't know the other team's pitchers? If you know, you know. Bang a trash can if you know what I'm talking about. But his signing also solves a defensive question that the Cubs had at third base, although it also creates a new question for the young Micah Shaw, which I'm going to get into a little bit later. The other massive move the Cubs made was trading for Edward Cabrera. Got them from the Florida Marlins. To get him, the Cubs had to give up Owen Casey. Owen Casey, for those unaware, he was the Cubs' top prospect. He was a guy that was bandied about in the last trade deadline that the Cubs just did not want to move off from. But they chose to get off of him for Edwin Casey. Whether that comes to bite the Cubs in the butt later on down the line, we shall see. But Cabrera has electric top of the rotation potential if he can stay healthy and if he can keep balls over the plate. The last part is key. He struck out 150 guys in 137 innings last season, and that's a season removed from Tommy John. The concern, like I said, of course, is his injury history. He's had shoulder impingements, elbow sprains, the list is long. But the Cubs are betting that with their pitching infrastructure, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, can keep him on the mound and keep him fresh. Starting pitching injuries and managing the few healthy guys that the Cubs had last season to stay away from those same injuries was a big thing for the Cubs. They lost day one starter Justin Steele to Tommy John. Shada had a long IL stint early in the season, early during the summer. Cade Horton was unavailable for the playoffs after being the Cubs' best pitcher down the stretch. Taillon, he had multiple IL visits as well. He had to monitor Matt Boyd, his innings throughout the season because of his past injury history as well. Shout out to my boy Tim Lyons in the comments because we're gonna talk about them St. Louis Cardinals of yours real soon. I know you want to stick around for that. But yeah, Matt Boyd, we had to monitor his innings because of his past injury concerns, which, I mean, again, like I said, it was a lot of it kind of spelled the end for the Cubs season because every time you looked up, it was another pitching injury to the starting staff. It was like, how can we make it through this one now? We already got Taillon on the IL, we got lost Justin Steele for the season, and you got another guy going out. It was tough. It was rough. So adding depth and Edwin Cabrera, somebody with electric stuff, is really, really big. Really big for what the Cubs got going on. Shout out to my boy Bernard Pierce, Cub Nation. You know it, you see it, my boy. You see it. And the Cubs did not stop there. They remade the bullpen. They signed Phil Madden to a 2-year deal. They brought in guys like Hunter Harvey and Jacob Webb, just bolstering that back end of that bullpen as well. Crucially, I think one of the biggest things the Cubs did this offseason is Shota Imanaga back. Well, the Cubs didn't actually do that, but he is back healthy. He is back healthy, and he's back with the Cubs. If you all recall, earlier in the offseason, the main thing the Cubs needed to do was make sure he was coming back. There was a weird contract dance where he declined some options, and he was slated for free agency, but they were able to figure some things out. He's returning for 1 year, $22 million deal. That's very big for the Cubs. You don't want to lose a guy like him. Even when he struggled at the end of last season, and if you recall in the playoffs, they even skipped one of his starts because he was struggling so bad. But he's a core piece of this rotation. When he's on, he's a top of the staff type of guy. I remember doing a show last season in which the Cubs had like a 75% win percentage on games that he starts. So when you have a pitcher that signals a win like that, you definitely don't want to let him walk for nothing. You don't want to walk at all, but especially not for nothing. But the biggest move of the offseason was not trading Nico Harrison. Making sure Nico Harrison was still in the clubhouse is huge. invaluable. He is not to be gone. He is not to be let go whatsoever. He's the Cubs' most consistent hitter. He's very consistent and reliable middle infielder. Middle infielder. Oof, tongue tied. If they had traded him after gaining Cabrera, after gaining Alex Bregman, it would have probably been like a one step forward, one step back situation. That's how big Nico Harrison is. Oof, did I say Nico Harrison? No, not Nico Harrison. Not Nico Harrison. Not the guy who traded Luka. Not him. But you can almost stamp the Cubs as being very much improved from that perspective. On the field, the Cubs got almost better in bringing back Nico, getting Alex, getting Edwin Cabrera, and shoring up some of that bullpen. The bullpen was one of the strengths for the Cubs team, but making it even stronger, you can't take that away. You liking what the Cubs are doing from a roster construction move. The second thing I want to talk about in this episode is the spring training storylines. Like I said, the Cubs are now reporting to Mesa. The first official practice with the entire team is going to be early next week. Pitchers and catchers are there. But the biggest headline coming out of camp right now is the Zach Gallen rumbles. Another pitcher for the Cubs. All the insiders are pointing him in the Cubs' direction. He is a free agent, and you were probably asking, like, okay, you just went on a whole rant about the Cubs having all these new pitchers and all stuff like that, but why on earth would they want to sign another starter when you already have 11? You can't even carry 12 starters on your roster against the rules, right? So if the rumors are true that Zach Gallen and the Cubs are eventually going to wed, that pretty much tells you that there's going to be a trade. You are going to even move off some other guys on the roster, because getting Zach Gallen, who's still in his prime, a young enough guy, and he's still a horse, no Diddy. That's not a move you're making for now. That's not a win now move. That's I'm preparing to win long term. That's for 2027, 2028, 2029, maybe even Carter Hawkins' favorite year, 2032. He's a long-term anchor. So if you assume that Zach Gallen and the Cubs are going to eventually meet in the middle, you can expect guys like Matt Boyd, Jameson Taillon, maybe Colin Ray, maybe even Brown, finally getting him off this team somehow, some way. Somebody's got to take him. But keep your eyes close. Keep your ears to the ground about the Zach Gallen news, because that's not going anywhere anytime soon. Maybe, hopefully, finally finding a new home for Brown. But more importantly, that should tell you that the Cubs are all in, 100%. That's something that Cubs Nation has been wondering about Tom Ricketts ever since 2017. Like, will you be all in? Will you make this a consistent thing where we consistently try to go and win more and more pennants, more and more World Series? We like what we tasted in 2016. We want to get some more of that. It ain't just a one and done type thing. But so if the rumors are true about Zach Gallen, you can rest assured that Ricketts and all of them, they are all in. They are done penny pinching. They are done treating the collective baseball tax like a hard cap. And it's also fair to question, if you're all in, why did you let Kyle Tucker walk? He only got what? 250 million from the Dodgers. You could have went up, you could have matched that if you wanted to. If you're really all in, a big part of why I think they didn't why they didn't retain Kyle Tucker, I already spoke about it. The vibes was off. I don't think Kyle Tucker was even wanted to come back, no matter the dollar amount. But also, a big part of the Cubs' money comes from Marquee Sports Network. The Cubs are taking back control of that network from Maga Sinclair. Reports were saying that the network was doing about 90 million in revenue back in 2021. And those same reports were reporting that revenue is down to about 20 million, if not less than that. if you've been paying attention to the biggest news in baseball the last few seasons, last few years rather, about the erosion of Diamond Sports Network, you're putting those two and two together. You're seeing that what's happening there, and you're seeing all the teams who had contracts with Diamond Sports cutting payroll. The Cubs did not have a relationship with Diamond Sports Network, but their local TV money seems to be drying up. If the Cubs are actually going to be all in while their local TV money is drying up, and a local TV deal is where you get a lot of your payroll money. If you don't have consistent, significant money, 75 million or above coming from your TV partners, you can pack it up. You can pack it up. You are not going to be able to pay any top line guys. In fact, just sell everything you got right now. Push, kick that can down the road until you actually got some money. So all in from the outside, you got all these moves coming in with Alex Bregman, Edwin Cabrera. You're trying to get Zach Gallen. You let Kyle Tucker walk. But you also got that situation going on with Marquee Sports Network. The question is, it can send mixed signals. I get it. I even think it's risky business. They think that they're Tom Cruise, basically. It'll all work out. I'm not concerned. The Cubs not going to be bankrupt anytime soon. They got the Zachary across the street. Room's about $400 a night. They'll be all right. Another major story coming out of spring training is the Craig Counsell. He named opening day starter on day one. He said Daniel Palencia is his guy. Usually you got managers, playing coy, keeping that stuff hush-hush, but Counsell just put it out there. Issue has always been control, but if he can harness his stuff, that splitter specifically, he can be a lockdown ninth inning guy. It's a bold move for Craig Counsell, especially for a young arm, because if you remember the second half of last season, his ERA was over 5. On the surface, this seems really crazy to get a type of confidence to a guy who was getting his shit rocked 6 months ago, but he's got elite velocity. And that's what you want batters to see in those high leverage moments in the 8th inning and 9th innings. He can get over 100 miles per hour. What the reports are saying that he's ditching his slider altogether. So, like I said, if he can control that split finger fastball, he's going to be impossible to hit. And he ain't the only one with great stuff that lacks control. You can check that box for Edwin and Shota Edwin too. Hopefully, the new strength program they got Shota fixes that, though. Next big massive storyline coming out of Mesa is the starting rotation's health. We know Justin Steele is coming along, but he's more than likely going to start the year on a 60-day IL to clear some roster space, meaning you won't see him until at least late May. That's going to be tough, but it also highlights why they needed to build that starting depth. Without Steele, you're looking at a rotation of Cade Horton, James Taillon, Matthew Boyd, Shota Ignaga, and Edwin Cabrera. And they also got Javier Assad and Ben Brown, hopefully not for long, as depth pieces. That is a really impressive staff. That's what she said. Valentine's Day is tomorrow. Hope she tells you all that too. But anyway, remember this team ran out of arms pretty much last postseason. They seem determined, and I like this about them. They seem determined that they are not going to let that happen again. Next thing to look out for this spring training is the World Baseball Classic. The Cubs have 8 players leaving camps for the WBC. It's a great thing for the sport. I like watching. It's very entertaining, but it's a nerve-wracking time for general managers around around Major League Baseball. You got Matthew Boyd. He's pitching for Team USA. I already told you that Matthew Boyd is one of those guys who's had a long history of injuries. You want to fingers crossed with him because you're going to have to play the innings game with him come late summer. Definitely concerned about his workload ramping up so quickly. Because WBC is like playoff baseball right off as soon as you get off the bus. Like I said, fingers crossed so that he gets out of that fresh and healthy. PCA is also on the USA roster. Not an injury concern for him, but hopefully this doesn't interrupt his offseason work on his strength, on his swing. If you remember, if you remember late last season when he tailed off, he started the season MVP track, but he tailed off towards the end of last season because pitchers basically figured him out. So he spent most of the offseason when he's not hanging out with Caleb Williams. He was working on his swing. Hopefully this doesn't interrupt that. Hopefully he has a good time and he has a good showing and he doesn't come back with his confidence crushed and we have to go through this whole thing with him that we saw the last 3 months. We don't want to start that off with a season with so much promise and so much expectation. We want to get that. I want to hope that the work shows itself early in the WBC. Finally, we got position battles. Bregman's going to be a third. So the question coming out of that is, where does Mega Shaw play? That was the immediate question after that signing for Alex Bregman. Everyone was asking about that. Some people thought he would be dealt off at some point, but he's too talented just to let go. And he's young. He's probably going to turn into a super utility guy. Some word has been that he's going to be in the right field. And if that's the case, I like that. He's too good of a hitter to just sit him down. So Craig Counsell is going to have his work cut out for him to get creative to get his bat in the lineup. And personally, like I said, I think right field is a great fit for him. The fewer times we got to see Suzuki in the corner outfield spot, the better. So a good rotation between him, Suzuki, and Moises at DH with Shaw, Ian, and Suzuki again playing in corner outfield spots. That sounds about right. Okay. So that's pretty much it for storylines. I'm going to bring it on home to the season predictions as our last segment. So what we got right now for the Cubs is what they're saying all around, all the baseball, all the sports books, all the computers. They seem to love the Northsiders. And I ain't talking about Zap and Roger. The PECOTA has the Cubs as a 90-win team. And that's great for the first thing, because one, as you saw with the way the season ended and losing Cal Tucker, you're like, wow, man, the Cubs may take a step back, but getting Alex Bregman and some other things put the Cubs right back up there. But 90 wins isn't the thing that caught my eye. It was winning the division by 10 games. Shout out to Tim Lyons. For those that don't know, PECOTA is the computer-generated projection model from Baseball Prospectus. So it's not one of those media biased things. It's just the computer. But not only does it take them, not only do the projections make the Cubs the clear favorites to win the Central, with the Brewers and the STL Kardashians doing everything to cut their payroll as this lockout is looming. As I talked about earlier, with the TV deals drying up all over the sport, the Cubs have to strike with the irons hot. They got the St. Louis Cardinals, I think, at 66 wins. 66 wins. That is close to 100. That's over 100 losses, actually. I love that for them. The Pirates, they're one of the teams that have improved this offseason, and with teams desperately trying to get off payroll, they do have an outside shot at a wild card spot. They could snatch a spot or come in last again. Neither would shock me. No shade to the Pittsburgh guys, but let's be honest. Let's be honest real quick. They're really just a farm system. They're really just another feeder team for other squads like the Dodgers, Yankees, and some other ones. The Cubs did get some good players off them once or twice in history. Aramis Ramirez, pretty good for the Cubs. But yeah, Biggest comp for the Cubs will come out of Cincinnati. The Cincinnati Margaret Shots. They will probably be the team that's mostly competitive with the Cubs for the division. They had a cup of coffee in the playoffs last year, and only thing that they were really missing from being a complete team was Thump in the lineup. Their home run leader last year was, I forget his name, but I think he only had 22 home runs. You saw the issue by a mile when you bring in a guy like Edwin. I'm not going to say his first name, Suarez, who had 49 last year. Um, Cincinnati guys are probably saying the Big Red Machine is back. We shall see about that. As always in baseball, and even still, even with the schedules now being balanced, your division is the biggest factor here. The Cardinals are projected to clock in around 66 wins. Like I said, the Beer Boys in Milwaukee, they're going to probably regress, and the numbers have them at. Let me scroll. They have them at 80 wins, which is there's a clear regression. That's almost 20 wins less than what they had last year. Ooh, and I love that for both teams. I love it. I know this is damn near impossible in baseball, but I want to see the Cubs sweep them both. I want them to just go 26-0 on them. The fans deserve nothing more than to see the Cubs waving that W flag all summer long. But back to the Cubs. On paper, the Cubs should walk away with this division. Like I said, PECOTA has them winning this division by 10 games. They won 92 last year, and that's with playing 500 ball the last 3 months of the season. They've upgraded at third base. They've upgraded their bullpen, which was their strength last year. But neither one was a weakness, to be honest. But in fact, the pen was undoubtedly their biggest strength. That was their biggest muscle. But like I said, if you improve it, there's nothing better than improving your strength. But again, this is all on paper. They have the best defensive team that I've seen. That I think I've seen in the last decade. And there's a trend all over social media reminiscing about 10 years ago, and the Cubs fans would love nothing more than for Wrigleyville to be rocking like it was November 3rd, 2016, all over again. They got the depth to survive an early steel injury. And if Palencia can lock down a ninth inning, this team is built for a run in October. The window is wide open, but it won't be open for too long. That work stoppage, the lockout, that is pretty much guaranteed after this season. I don't think there's anything stopping that from happening. I think the push for a salary cap from the owners is going to be that impetus, that crossing the road that makes the players say, we'll take our ball and go home. Go Ags, and every time when you have an opportunity staring in your face to do something, whether that's win or do anything in life, you have to snatch that opportunity. And this right here, a pennant, a World Series title, this opportunity is clear in the face of the Cubs. Here we go again, another shot at the top. It's been a while since Cub fans can say that. It's been a long time since the Cubs themselves can say that. These kind of expectations don't happen every year. You coming into the season with expectations to win 90 plus and go on a run, you don't see that. Well, Cubs fans don't see that. So let's go ahead and bring it on home. Pitchers and catchers are working. Opening day is just around the corner. It's going to be fun summer at Wrigley. I appreciate everybody that tapped in for this week's episode of Holy Cow. Fly to W.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode from the Frustrated Chicago Sports Fan Channel. Don't matter if you listen to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or watch it on Twitch or YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, share with a friend, hit the notification bell so you never miss a drop. And to all the guys from Chicago, we say three things. Bear down, go Cubs go, and sell the team, Jerry.